everyone, and welcome in. I'm Carrie Lippert-Gillaspie here for today's program, and I am joined by David Murphy right now. We're here at Marshfield Medical Center Credit Union, and we're going to talk about holiday scamming. It's unfortunate because it's a wonderful time of the year, but it also creates this atmosphere where scamming tends to happen quite a bit. So you're going to tell us about it and how people can protect themselves from it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the program. It's great to talk about these things. Unfortunately, it's one of these topics that we do have to go into, especially this time of year. So it's nice to be able to get this information out in front of people.
So tell us, first of all, why we tend to, scamming can happen at any time of the year, but it really tends to ramp up around the holidays, around Christmas time. Why is that?
Yeah, well, think of what your mindset is during this time of the year. So there's a lot of things going on, whether it's through work, from a work perspective, a lot of things before the end of the year here. From a personal perspective, you're getting things ready for Christmas or whatever holiday that you celebrate. And that involves a lot of planning when it comes to like family gatherings perhaps, or it's gift giving or whatever. And so you're constantly on the go, all your weekends are taken up. And so it's an opportune time for scammers to find you in a quote vulnerable spot because you're not thinking about all these other things. You're not on top of your game, so to speak, like you would be any other time of the year. You've got so many things on your plate right now that the last thing you want to deal with is a call from your financial institution or whoever questioning you about things. So you're just going to push things through so you can turn your focus back on, quote unquote, the more important things. And that's why scammers take the advantage of this time of the year.
Yeah, you're trying to, wrestle with the thoughts of like the in-laws and like,
Right.
presents for your little cousins and stuff like that. So you don't want to have to deal with those other things. And it's almost like they know that vulnerability and they jump on it. I also think that the elderly tend to be really targeted for reasons, that they're more confused easier, things like that. So tell us why those types of people tend to be targets as well.
Yeah, like you said, with the advancements that we've seen in technology, especially over the last 5 to 10 years, everything seems to have gone more digital. And unfortunately, the group of people who are left behind are our older family members, grandparents or even some aunts and uncles who didn't grow up with cell phones in their hands. They didn't grow up with computers necessarily in their homes. And so a lot of this is new to them. So back in the day when they were 20, 30, 40 years old, it was a lot more of a trustworthy society. Mm-hmm. You could walk in, shake someone's hand, and you knew that they were going to give their word. That doesn't always play well when it comes to the internet because we know fraudsters are out there. We know that people are emailing and phishing for information or whatnot. So they think that when they get an email request saying, well, this is ABC Bank and we need your information, that they're thinking, okay, well, that sounds right because I do work with them. So they're more vulnerable to fall for that because of that trusting nature. And then also, when it comes to like phone calls or whatnot, we've seen, and I know this goes a little bit away from the holiday scams perspective, but we've seen a lot of impersonation scams where a family member supposedly is calling and saying, hey, Grandma, I'm in jail right now. I need you to send me, $5,000 to get out or whatever. And for those grandparents who are concerned, and rightly so, they think, oh my gosh, well, little Billy's in jail. I need to help him out. So instead of thinking about it, saying, well, that's weird. He's not in this area. Why would this situation, instead of logically thinking about it, they play into the emotion of this situation. And all of a sudden they're out $5,000 because they sent gift cards to a scamster or whatever the situation is. And so, when they find themselves in that situation, they don't know that they were scammed until afterwards. When they talk to someone and someone goes, well, Grandma, I wasn't in jail. And all of a sudden they're like, well, who did I give my money to?
Yeah.
And they have to find out the hard way. And it's really unfortunate that that's the way that the society is these days. But everyone's subject to it, unfortunately.
Yeah, if someone calls your grandma and said, David's in jail, what is your grandma's like, nah, just leave him there.
yeah, probably.
Yeah, it's unfortunate things like that happen. You mentioned the gift cards, which is something that I have seen via text message. You'll get like a text message from a boss or something like that, and it'll be like, hey, like, I need you to do me a favor. And of course you want to say yes to your boss, and it's like, I need you to go to Best Buy and get me $100 worth of gift cards. And it's like, why would my boss want this? So exactly. I hear the gift card one quite a bit. That's another one that people should be on guard for.
Yeah, for sure. Gift cards are gift cards are used heavily by scamsters because it's something that can't be retracted. So once you give them information away or you go buy a gift card, it's not like, oh, well, I caught it in time, I'm going to go return these gift cards, right? So that's first and foremost. And second is once they give that card information away, because you think like, okay, well, how do you physically send a card through the phone, right? And you're like, well, I would never fall victim to that. Well, no, what they do is they have you go buy this gift card in this situation, and then they have you give the information off the gift card. They go then use it however they are able to retract the money off of those cards, and you're out the money. You can't go back to the gift card company and say, well, I didn't actually use the money for what I intended, or what it was intended to use for. You can't go back to the store and say, well, I didn't legitimately buy this because you did, so you're really stuck in that situation. So anytime anyone is asking you for a gift card who's not, it's one thing if your niece or your nephew is like, yeah, I want gift cards for Christmas. I'm not saying those situations, but if someone calls you or emails you and says, yeah, I need you to send large sums of dollars through gift cards, that's a red flag to make sure to say, okay, well, maybe I really need to, hang up, or I need to actually contact this individual. Did you really request $5,000 in Apple gift cards? I mean, Apple is a common one because they figured out a way where they can get the funds off of those and use them, not necessarily just through Apple, or maybe they're buying iPads or whatever, but they've been able to monetize that. So that's a common one. But you really want to make sure that when someone's requesting that, especially out of the blue, that it is legitimate.
Yeah. What are some other scams that you guys are seeing, just in recent? What is something else, another kind of scam that's come up?
Yeah, there's they're getting more bold, I will say, with their requests. So what we're hearing a lot more of is just coming straight out, and people are mimicking different financial institutions and saying, hey, this is John Smith from ABC Bank. I see that there's some suspicious activity on your account, but just to verify, can you give me your username and your password for your online banking? Because we just want to make sure we're dealing with the right individual. Again, if you're not thinking, you think, okay, well, they should have access to this. You give that information out, and then all of a sudden they've logged in, they've moved money out, they've transferred it outside of the institution, and you're kind of stuck because those funds are gone. So that's been one it's pretty much on the nose because they're coming right out and asking you for that information. A lot of times it'll be your typical ones where they're calling and saying, oh, well, I see that there's been some fraud on your account, and we know how heavily used credit cards and debit cards are these days, and some of it's used online, some of it's used in person, but you're buying so much stuff right now, or typically, a lot of people are buying so much stuff that when someone calls and says, well, did you do this purchase at Walmart? I mean, you're not thinking, you're like, well, maybe I did. But even if you're like, well, I don't think so, you respond no, they're immediately contacting you and go, okay, well, we just need to verify your card number, your information off your card, or social security number, or whatever information. You're thinking, okay, well, this is kind of weird. But if you've never gone through that outside of like this time of year, to know that we would never ask for that, or most financials, if not all financials, are not going to ask you for that type of information, you might think this is just par for the course. So you give that information out, then all of a sudden they've got your social, they've got whatever information they've gathered or requested from you, and then what do you do from there? So those are common ones that we see, and unfortunately we continue to see them. There's a lot of social media scams right now that go on, and that's kind of just a general thing where people are reaching out to you or will add you as a friend, and then all of a sudden they get this story going, and then usually what they try to do is they build some type of an emotional tie, right? Like, oh, I'll be your friend, and then all of a sudden it's, oh, well, it's the holidays, and I don't have any money for my family, and some people will be like, okay, well, this is ridiculous, I'm not going to partake. Some people are going to be like, well, I feel emotionally, vested in this, I want to help you out. All of a sudden, then they send some money, may start small, ends up being a little bit larger, and then all of a sudden that money's gone because it really didn't go to a family in need or whatnot.
It's crazy you mentioned that, but it's right, you're doing so much more purchasing this time of year. So, I mean, I'm purchasing more things, so there's more things coming up on my card that I wouldn't normally buy. So if someone calls you and they're like, oh, we've noticed you spent, this at Target or whatever it is, it's like, well, I am buying more things. That kind of checks out. So you know what I mean? Like, it makes sense. This is a time of year when you tend to have more purchases that aren't typical. In July or these other months, it's like, yeah, like I spent $100 at getting groceries, but anything more would stand out to me more.
Correct. It just kind of gets lost in the noise.
Yeah.
And then, like, what we started out with, everything else that's going on. Honestly, I'm willing to bet that probably 80% of people, if not more, aren't sitting down at the end of a shopping day or whatever and filling out their checkbook register, right, and actually keeping track of everything. So to your point, you go out and you stop at 15 different stores and you buy stuff at 10 of them. If you get a call from your card company and they're saying, well, did you do this? First, you might just be like, I don't know, did we even go there? Maybe I did, I don't know.
Yeah.
And you're not thinking, or it takes you a while, and if you're just like, well, I got other shopping to do, so no, I didn't, whatever, it just leads down this path where all of a sudden, before you know it, and I think that's the most important part about this, is if you take a step back and just take a breath and be like, okay, well, let me think about this, I would say probably 9 times out of 10, you're going to be like, okay, well, this doesn't sound right, I'm not going to continue. But in most situations, when you're on the go, and they always seem to hit you at the worst time, when you're on the go, you just want that to end. And so you can move back onto shopping or eating dinner with your family or whatever you're doing. And so you just do whatever it takes to get that conversation over with. But in the process, then sometimes information can be leaked or they can gather information from you that you don't mean to.
So if you get a call or a message or something like that, what should be the first red flag in your mind? My first thought is that if it's something like regarding the government or like your money, like they're not going to reach out to you via text message.
Correct.
you know,
absolutely.
So that's a red flag right away. What are some other red flags?
Yeah. So I would say, even if so going back to the whole shopping thing, online shopping has obviously risen in the last number of years, so which means when you online shop, you get shipments, right? So a lot of what we're seeing now in general is just like UPS, USPS, FedEx, right? You're getting text messages saying, hey, your delivery is going to need to be rescheduled. Click this link, right? So it's easy to be like, well, I probably am getting something delivered from one of these companies, right? But again, to your point, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to first solicit you via text message or even email. So I would say if you get a message like that, take a second and make sure that go through the steps that you would typically use to analyze like an email or a text. Like, are the links legitimate? Are they taking you to the place they're going to take you to? You know, like if it's the post office, for example, is it taking you to USPS.com or is it taking you to like Timbuktu.org or whatever, like one of those, phishing websites. So like make sure that everything looks legit. With the emergence of AI, the emails have gotten a lot more sophisticated because usually it was like, okay, we'll look for spelling errors, look for phrasing that doesn't make sense because, like they were typically written by someone who wasn't English speaking or English wasn't their primary language. So you could see those holes pretty quickly, but with like ChatGPT and everything else that's emerged, they're kicking out like perfect English.
Yeah.
So it almost is getting to the point where like maybe perfect English is actually your red flag because, the way that we talk and everything nowadays, like we don't necessarily speak perfect English. So maybe that is a red flag as well. But I think it's just the timing of the solicitation. Like a lot of times if you order something like off Amazon, for example, and I know this is a bad example because Amazon gets spoofed a lot as well, but you can go into your Amazon account and pull up that order and actually track it right that way, as opposed to like, okay, well, I got this email from Amazon.
Or this text.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I would say go straight to the source. Like if you bought something off Walmart.com, go back to your Walmart.com account or find the order number. And I get it. It's extra steps. I know what we're asking you to do. But take the extra steps, go straight to the source, input it in there, and then determine if, okay, well, no, that actually isn't a delay in my shipment.
Yeah.
It looks like something got hosed up or I got spoofed, by one of these shipment companies or whatever. So that would be my big thing would be just if you get any message, even if you think it's legit or it's down to the T, looks perfect, I would still go back to the source and make sure that it is legitimate before you get that information away.
The other thing I think of too is like sometimes I'll get emails and it'll be from like USPS or whatever, but then if you click the email, it'll and pull it up, it'll say it'll be like USPS mail at gmail.com, which like should be a red flag because USPS would not be using a Gmail account.
Correct.
So that's something I always think of to tell people too. It's like just, it'll say who it's from, it'll be like US Postal Service, but then when you click it, it'll show the email. And if it's from Gmail, it's probably not USPS.
Right. Well, and that is a good segue into, so another scam that we see just in general is that with like online shopping and you think like, oh, okay, I'm going to, Amazon's a little different. The big box stores are one thing, but a lot of people like to do like boutique shopping or small store shopping. And what we'll see is that phishing emails will get sent out with a link mimicking a small store. Maybe there's one in Marshfield here that you like to shop at, and they're sending an email and it looks like it's to this store when in fact it's actually not a legitimate store. So you could actually go through, buy your stuff, give your credit card information, while all they're doing is just taking that credit card information, turning it around and using it to buy stuff as well. So that's another thing. Just make sure you're visiting the actual store or site that you think that you're visiting because it's easy to be like, oh, well, I see they're running a 75% off sale. I'll click through this link and then all of a sudden, oh, well, that actually wasn't legitimate. So that's another area to watch out for as well.
So let's say you do get scammed for whatever reason, whatever it is. Our hope is that people will hear this and that it'll prevent them from getting scammed. But they're getting so good at doing it that sometimes even the people who are the most prepared, like, it can fall into something. So say you do get scammed. what should you do to make sure your money is protected, your accounts are safe? What is the first thing you should do?
Yeah, so I would say don't keep this information to yourself. So whether it's you have someone trusted in your family that you're willing to open up to about this, if you don't, talk to your financial institution, because I know that we've seen people come in and you can tell that they're embarrassed that it happened, and I'd almost say that they're a little bit in denial, like, I can't believe that I fell for this. We are not in a position, I'll speak just for the credit union ourselves, but we're not in a position where we're going to bring shame upon you for this situation, because we know how common it is, we know how legitimate it sounds. But if you don't have this conversation with us, we don't know that it's happening, because we can't keep tabs on everyone's account all the time. But two, then you could keep falling for the same scam over and over again. So I would say reach out to your financial institution, have the conversation with them. One, general scam or attack that we've seen over the past, I don't know how many years, is the computer takeover attacks, where someone will somehow get a virus installed on a computer, and then all of a sudden they'll get a call. Someone say, hey, I'm from Microsoft, I need to get on your computer. They get onto there, and then all of a sudden they're moving stuff around, making it look like, well, yeah, look at what the fraudsters did. In those types of situations, to use it as an example for the question, is let's say you do say, like, okay, well, I caught it. I changed my password, whatever. A lot of times what they're doing is they're installing software on your computer to track, like a keylogger virus is what it's called. So basically it'll track everything you type into your computer. Well, changing your password isn't going to matter, because they can still track what the password is. They'll still be able to get into your computer. So what we tell members as soon as we hear that is, take your computer to a trusted, whether it's local or not, take your computer to someone, have them scan it, make sure they wipe all the viruses off your computer so that it doesn't pop up in the future. But if we don't have that conversation and they think, well, I took care of it, I'm good. Well, maybe you're not. And that's not to scare people, because it sounds like, well, geez, I just shouldn't use my computer. I mean, that is an option for some, but for a lot of people, like through email, like you're saying, or checking Facebook or whatever they're using it for, it's not necessarily an option. So make sure that you're talking to someone, again, whether it's someone in your family, whoever, make sure you're reaching out to someone and don't just keep that information yourself.
I always think that you shouldn't lie to your doctor or your financial advisor, because those are two, they need to know the truth, because they can't help you if they don't know the truth.
Absolutely.
So those are the two where it's just
right?
No lying.
Right.
Amazing. Anything else that people should know, David, just to keep themselves safe this holiday season?
I think, just to put a bow on this entire conversation is really just be diligent, because, as we said, this is the time of year where they're going to ramp up their attacks, and it's going to look legitimate, and it's easy to dismiss it and say, A, it's not going to happen to me, or B, I know what I'm looking for. And I think just taking that extra second to give it an extra thought and to be like, okay, well, does this sound legit or not? Because a lot of times you think like, oh, it's going to be this elaborate scheme or whatnot, and it's not that. It's just something simple that you weren't thinking, and all of a sudden your information's gone. And once it's gone, or once it's out there, there's not a lot you can do about it.
Yeah.
So just be extra diligent.
All right. Thank you so much for being here, David. We really appreciate it. Appreciate you having your expertise here.
Yeah.
Appreciate you all for joining us. Make sure you are staying safe this holiday season, and have a Merry Christmas.